So, good morning and thank you for coming to this session. I'm going to introduce Power Query and the language it supports. And you will see it's a pretty useful tool that gives you a lot of possibilities inside Excel. So I guess this is one of the best parts of the Power BI. I guess we all know each other by now. So I will introduce Power Query itself and then the functional language it supports, the M language. And then we'll see how you can use it to import a lot of different kinds of data, including a lot of unstructured data, so from so-called big data. Yeah, we already turned off the heating. And some tips how you can make some advanced queries and then summarize the session. So why Power Query? This is kind of ETL tool for personal level, extract, transform, load. In a way, it is much simpler than integration services, which is like enterprise level, but on the other hand, it has also some possibilities that would be very nice to have there in SSIS. Basically, the most important thing is that it can return tables from all kind of data sources. Now, of course, all of this hype with big data started with unstructured data, which makes no sense because any kind of analysis we are doing on data, we are doing it on structured data, typically tabular format. So the good thing is that now we can get this tabular format from all kind of sources, of course, including databases, including SQL Server, but also from Facebook, from Foursquare, from, web pages. So this is pretty impressive. A lot of knowledge built inside Power Query, a lot of knowledge from Bing Search and other Microsoft internal engines. Kind of simple interface for starting, but then also it supports full functional language. So what you can do is search for any kind of public data, import data from external sources, and combine data and shape it from multiple sources. You can do it through user interface. You can filter, sort, group data, add new columns, join tables, merge or union tables. And of course, when you read this data, you can add data either to workbook, so Excel worksheet like a table, Excel table, or you can add it to Excel data model, actually Power Pivot data model. In Office 365, you can also share queries between different videos. Of course, you can also share them with Excel 2013 if you share the worksheets or simply copy-paste the queries. So it's available as free download for Excel 2010 or 2013. Please note, in 2013 there is already limitation. It works only on Professional Plus edition. In 2010 it still works on all editions. And in Power BI it's not free anymore. Power BI it's not free, so Microsoft is kind of changing the policy slowly, but it's going to the payable direction. The amount of data sources is already impressive, and of course it is possible already to extend these data sources with custom query because we have full-blown query language behind. And of course this is not simple task to do, but the amount of data sources is rising with every new edition. So we got like every 3 months we got an upgrade of Power Query, and typically you get 2-3 more additional data sources. The only problem is that these upgrades come so fast that documentation doesn't follow it. So many times you have the newest version and you don't know exactly what to do with it. Or it also happened a year ago, that some syntax in the Power Query formula language or M language changed and it was never documented, so suddenly queries didn't work and how to find what's wrong and so on. Okay, this the bad part. Also, this is kind of end user tool, so in Excel. So there is frequent question, can we use this in integration services or in scheduled jobs or so on? And not out of the box. So this is not something that would Microsoft provide yet. But of course, loading data from external sources would be extremely useful also for enterprise level business intelligence applications. So this is probably the most frequently requested feature to get kind of this at least formula language, if nothing else, in SSIS. Also worth mentioning, there is an independent product, Power Update, which actually uses Power Query API and Windows scheduling service, so you can create a scheduling updates for Power Query for Excel worksheets only. And this Power Update is free from yesterday. They decided to give it for free, so this is completely new. So if you search for Power Update, you can freely download. Only current limitation for the free version is that you can automatically update only one Power Query per workbook. So, okay, limitations, but still, you know, most of the time, this is already good, because, you know, most of the time you are still reading data from data warehouses and so on, and just enriching it with additional sources, sources that don't come from your company. So public data that is available through online search, this is through Bing search, of course, this varies by region. So typically you get from websites, pages, all kind of tables that are there, like Wikipedia tables, Azure Marketplace data sets that are free, you can search for them, and some government and bank health data sources. And of course, these limitations are coming from Bing limitations, you know, that of course in China you cannot search for democracy, for example, they don't allow, and so on. So basically, if you can search for a table with Bing, you can get this table in your Excel with Power Query. And you can just import the results, or of course work more on the results with Power Query, and you preview them in Power Query editor. This editor is the visual interface, and first it starts by downloading the results to this editor, and then you can copy these results to workbook or to data model. Here you can graphically with interface remove and rename columns, sort data, change data types, change data formats, split a row. Let's say that you have comma separated values or any other delimited, so you can split a row in multiple columns, or remove duplicates or remove errors. You can also get rows with errors. For example, when you change data type, and I don't know, from character to integer, some values might not be possible to change, so you get errors there, you can just remove them. You can even group rows and aggregate data values, and kind of flatten parent-child relationship, which means importing child side to parent side, and add these as columns. Then you can merge queries or query results. So this is join, Power Query join. Append query results is Power Query union. Now we have always some kind of security behind. So we have 3 levels for dealing with data sources. So this is basic security for Power Query. Defines who can use these data sources. Let's say you are creating them, you can always use them, but then you can define that anybody can use them, so they are publicly available on your computer, of course. Or organizational means only to people that log in with username from the same domain, not local users, for example. or of course private, it means it's only yours. Anyway, this is just the security for usage of data sources. Okay? So when you connect to data sources, if it's not public, of course, you need to have credentials for that data source. You cannot just connect to SQL Server even if data source has public permissions normally. But then if you combine data from multiple sources, then you want to bypass all of these checkings of security, so you can use fast combine option and say, okay, everything should be public, not without any specific setting, so we can always get the results. You can just save the query, and in Office 365 you can also share it, or you can load the data into worksheet or into workbook data model, which is actually Power Pivot behind. So instead of merging query results, you can also perform joins in Power Pivot and do additional data manipulation through DAX expressions and so on. So let me show you a couple of examples before we go more in depth with the M language, M formula language. So I will start with a simple example, blank workbook. Yes, please.
So can you save all the data then, so you can do it disconnected as well?
Yes. Once data is here, it's disconnected.
Yeah.
You need connection only when you refresh the data. So here is Power Query tab, and you see here are all kind of options. This is Power BI for Office 365. You have to sign in with valid account, and then you can share queries to catalog. This is the only thing that is specific for Office 365. Here are all possible data sources. So, starting from database, we have, of course, SQL Server, Access, Analysis Services, Oracle, DB2, MySQL, PostgreSQL, Sybase, Teradata, so all kind of databases. Nearly all kind, of course, the most important ones. Worth mentioning, I will later show you also query that uses Analysis Services database. Currently, it supports only Analysis Services multidimensional. So it creates MDX queries. So for tabular, for DAX queries, it's still not supported out of the box. And for DMX data mining queries in the multidimensional, also not supported out of the box yet.
Have they suggested that they're going to do that?
Definitely. This Analysis Services MDX queries are available from November 2014 for that update. So probably in the next update they will extend support. Also, you cannot get queries from data model that's inside the same worksheet. Because this is Analysis Services tabular. Okay. You can get around these limitations if you, let's say, create a web service on the top of Analysis Services and then use web service, of course. Yes, but this is not Power Query. It's not out of the box. So let me go to SQL Server database. I will connect to my virtual machine SQL Server. Okay, and okay, this user interface doesn't look too good. This is SQL query, so I will just copy and paste it. So this will give me sales by country. Let's see it. Okay, let's do it. And of course, this is summary of sales by country. So you might ask yourself, how come we'll go there? How did I get to SQL Server? So data source settings, when you connect for the first time, the settings for data source are saved. So you see I connected to many sources already. So for example, this is the one I was using. And you see this was stored. So since I'm not in domain in virtual machine, I again work with latest development in security and connect as SA, right? And store password locally.
And the password's password.
Yeah, so this is very important, right? Security. Anyway, I've got this data here, so I've got countries and sales total, sales amount, Australia, Canada, etc. Now, of course, I can close and load, or decide where to load, close and load to. So Excel table, okay. I can only create connection, or I can load to Excel table and also add to data model. So data model is this analysis services tabular that is hidden behind, and Power Pivot window gives me the management tool and the development tool for this model. So let me load in both places. And you see, I'm still here. Just went out. So here is my Power Query, right? With, I didn't change the name, so it has default name query1. So this is Excel table. And of course, this is already here also in the Power Pivot data model. So I have now a very simple data model. And I can start analyzing it or whatever. This is already a kind of analysis. Now let's say that this is not good enough. So if we sort, let's say, from largest to smallest, we see that we have the largest sales in United States, but Australia is nearly, the amount is nearly as big as in United States. So could be more interesting information to get sales per capita. So would be nice to have population in this table or in some other table. And here is where I can use Power Query to search for online data. So I will go to online search, and this is Bing search engine. So I will search, I'm interested for countries by population, and you see this is actually suggesting like Bing is suggesting. Okay, now it's searching for all free sources available, any free source that can be converted to table. So we have, you see, from Wikipedia, and a lot of things from Wikipedia, something from CIA, and so on, at the bottom list by, and you can see some kind of data, okay. So I will go just to the first one and check it. This is what I need. I have countries, I have population, and some other pieces of data. I can just load this, or I can go to Power Query window and edit this query. Okay, so now I will.
Sorry, how did you get to that window? Sorry.
Let me close it. So I was just hovering the cursor over this source, and now I got this window, so I can edit it. But anyway, if you double click it, should also come. Yes, if you just double click this. No, this is load by default. Yeah, I just loaded it, but now they can right click and edit and then refresh. There are multiple ways. So this is my source, right? And you see, first of all, this is not completely useful. I have columns that I don't need. All I need is country name and population. But also, please note, this population, note up there, data type is text. So I'm going to first do some massaging of this data. So I will just select columns that I don't need and say remove columns. So I got only country and population. And you see, I got all of the steps here in query pane. And if I want to get columns back, I simply delete the step and I'm back to the source query. I can also remove columns in a different way. Let's select these two and remove other columns. Okay, so I did the same thing. Now let me just change this data type to whole number, to integer. Of course, this is population. Typically we measure in a complete person's the population, not half of it. Now I will not solve the problem yet, but I will just show you the problem. this data in Wikipedia has an error in it. Let's go here to Belarus. You see, it's an error. It couldn't be converted to integer. So now I will not even care about this error because I will join this data to the source table. So Belarus will be filtered out by the join, but by the end of the presentation, I will show you how you can get this error message inside the table with Power Query formula language.
How did you know there was an error?
How did I know that there was an error? Good question. Good question. Let me close and load. I think here, yes, here it is. Here it is immediate information that there is one error. So this is how you notice. Okay, so let me go and edit and show you source query. You can still see source query, and let's see what's wrong with Belarus. So you see the number, the string, what is first comma is missing, is blank instead of comma. And this is directly from Wikipedia. Okay. So now I have my two tables. Did I also load it? Let me also load it. I probably didn't load it to the Power Pivot model. Okay, but it doesn't really matter because if I would want to make a join here in Power Pivot, then I would need to load it here. But I will create a join with Power Query this time. And let me also edit this query to rename it sales by country, like this. And now let me create a new query. And I will merge existing queries, sales by country with list of countries. So English country region name will be joined to country or dependent territory and only include matching rows. So I will filter out rows that I don't need. And I already get information. The selection has matched 6 out of the first 6 rows. So it's all right. Those countries that I have sales in, those countries are matched correctly. So I got, you see, data. I got sales total, and then I got data in tabular format. And down here I can see this nested table. Of course, because loading this into data model, I need to flatten this. So I go here and expand columns. And all I need is population. And if I use original name as prefix, then name of the column is new column population. This was original name. So let me just rename it. Of course, I could simply uncheck this checkbox. So now I have sales total and population. Now it's easy to add a custom column with mQuery language. And let's call it sales per capita. And what will be custom formula? Of course, this will be sales total divided by population, but since sales is pretty low, I will just multiply it by 1,000, so we'll get numbers that are easier to see and analyze. Okay, so close and load to. So let's load this to also to data model. And of course, now if I go to Power Pivot, doesn't need to do anything here, but just to show you how we could work with this. So now I could create foreign keys also in Power Pivot if this would be needed. Okay, but of course it's not needed. Anyway, now I can start analyzing this, right? So let's say I want to have chart and table from my data model, and I don't need Power Query queries anymore. Of course, it's always good habit that you rename before you load merge one, query one, okay? But anyway, now I have English country region name, and I can show either sales total, right? Or of course I can show sales per capita and of course total count. Let's value field settings. Let's change this to average, for example. Okay, I should. What did he say? Didn't change data type. I didn't change data type, so it's text, and for text we have only counts, which is 1. So you see, this is the problem. Have to remember to do everything. Sales per capita, so let's say this is decimal number. Okay. So let's go here and say again this in rows and sales per capita. So let's see what we got in the table. Count. Let's see if now I can change this to some. No, it didn't load to power pivot, so let me go here and manage it here. Apparently I loaded it twice. Delete from model. Let me go and manage this here. So first let's rename. Like this, and sales per capita. This is where I had twice the same table, so I simply used the wrong one. This is already a decimal number. Okay, let me now create a pivot table in a new worksheet, and now I have this sales per capita, country region, sales per capita, and now you can see that Australia is, of course, per capita much bigger than United States, which is actually the lowest. So we simply enhanced the power pivot, the SQL Server data with custom data from any kind of resource. So, and we did a lot of manipulation, right? We did some changing data types, merging data, adding custom columns. But what we created behind is a Power Query expression. So Power Query formula language, also known as M. It was kind of working name. Now official name is Power Query formula language, although everybody still talks about M. So it is similarly like R, it is a functional language. So we work through functions and expressions. And your formulas and expressions are translated by Power Query to native source queries. With advanced query editing window, you can see the complete Power Query expression. Now, maybe a quick comment. The amount of languages that Microsoft is supporting just in SQL Server and BI Suite is enormous. It's really enormous. I don't know why it's really needed that for every single product they invent a new language. They missed this rule only once, in reporting services. For reporting services expressions, you use VB, which is incredible that they didn't invent.
Even then, it's different to expressions in sys.
Yes. And also there are, on the top of this VB, there are reporting services aggregate functions, which are not part of VB. Okay, so even this is not, but I don't know how they managed to use VB. Why didn't they invent new expressions, languages? Like in integration services, if you look at SSIS expression language, you let's say declare variables with that sign like in transact SQL. You let's say change data types, cast data types by adding the destination data types in brackets in front of the value, like in C#. you refer to namespaces and objects inside namespaces, like in C++ and so on. So just take something from here, something from there, and you have a new expression language, right? Not too hard to learn, but still. So we have a new language, and of course, if you want to really write advanced things, you have to learn this language. Even without this language, you saw Power Query is powerful. It's not a big deal. Most of users will be able to use Power Query even without ever touching the M language. You can do also unpivoting, for example. All of this is supported through user interface. Now let's talk a little bit about this language. So expression is evaluated or computed in a way that it yields a single value. And this value is either scalar or, in Power Query terminology, primitive value. So number, logical, text, or null. Or it's a list. This is ordered sequence of values. Or you can return a set of fields. So this is a record, similar like tuple in relational model. Still, it is ordered. So you can always refer to the position. And table. So table is a list of records. And again, this is not a relational table. It's still ordered, so you can still refer not just by column names, for example, but also by column positions to get the value. And you can create custom function, which can accept arguments and return either scalar or more complex value. Order of calculation is determined automatically. Of course, precedence constraints are considered and so on, like in every programming language. So, as I said, we can refer to columns through field names, record and field name, but we can also access things through zero-based positional index operator, which are curly brackets. Now, there are common definitions, constants, common functions that are very, very useful, and these are defined in so-called library. And apparently, EMS currently supports only a single library, which is called library. So library is the name of this single library. I wonder what will happen when they add another library, but this is very typical. Slovenia is small, so you don't expect that you would have many occurrences of the same thing. So we have, like in Ljubljana, we have first skyscraper that is called this skyscraper, and then we have Irish pub called Irish pub, and we have English pub called English pub, and we have Scottish pub called Scottish pub. So start with this, and then suddenly you are in trouble. What now? What the second one? Okay, so we have library called library. The names of values, so we have constant, like named values, which are provided by the library. So you don't need to explicitly define them. You can just use them. So we have, for example, constants like number e or pi, and we can use some predefined functions like position of, which gives me the position of substring in a string. The only problem here is, as I already mentioned, documentation. So current documentation is more than 1 year old, and it's been like 3 or even 4 upgrades since the current documentation, since the last time documentation was changed. You can also add additional metadata to your actual data. So you add an additional metadata record, custom properties. So these are properties besides column name and column data type. Or you can add metadata to the complete table. And then you can use this in expressions as you wish. So this is more like for for your information. Let me show you a couple of examples, so we will not have so many examples left at the end. So I will create a blank workbook, and I have a lot of expressions already here, so I don't need to write everything, right? So let's go and say Power Query, and we'll go from other sources, and we'll say blank query. So I will start with blank query, and let's rename it expressions demo. And you see, I will go here to the advanced editor. So this is my editor. But for these simple expressions, I don't even need to go there. I can just write expression here, starting with equal clause, and let's see what happens. So this is constant 1. So what happened behind is let source equals 1 in source. So this is what happened with this expression. Now what else? Let's make some calculations, like mathematical operations, 2 multiplied by 2. And this is actually string. You see, it was not evaluated. This is string. How about now? If I say equals, then it's evaluated. Let's see what happens behind the scenes. Now it's similar expression as we had earlier, just with calculation. If I remove this equal sign, I actually created, you see, different expression. Equal sign leads to evaluation. Otherwise this is simply treated as a string. Okay, so I can create a list. I can create a list of ordered values, and this is how list is represented. Okay, looks like table, right? And let me represent a record. You see, the difference is that I'm using square brackets. Now I have again this represented in kind of similar format, just it is also graphical presentation is different, so you have the idea it is something else. And I got this possibility convert into table. So now I can convert this in tabular format and get these values row by row. Okay. And again, you can also use first row as headers and work with this table. And what happened? I used a record to table function, which is a built-in function in the library called library. Let's go back to the source. Let me create explicitly a table. These tables and these collections, the name starts with a hash sign. So now I have records in rows, you see. And first, what I provided to this table is two lists. So first is the list of column names, and then is list of rows. And this list of rows has inside for every row a list of values. And since we have positions, I know that value 1 belongs to column A because they are both on first position. So I created a custom table. Okay, evaluation order. Let me add this expression. Let me add this expression. And please note that Power Query was pretty smart here. So in my expression, I started with C equals A plus B, but A and B are not defined yet. And then I define A, define B, right? And Power Query changed the order of evaluation automatically. So evaluated first expressions for A and B, and then expression for C. It was smart enough. Is it a good thing? Yes and no, as always. You know, yes and no. It, in a way, it's nice because you don't have to take so much care when you are writing the code. But there is no free lunch. You know, if you have a bug, it's harder to track it. So I would still prefer to write these expressions step by step in a logical order. But as I said, this is possible with Power Query to rely on automatic evaluation order. Let me write a function. So I created my function, which accepts 3 parameters, and this is sign for definition of the function, and it will return sum of these 3 parameters. So I'm returning 2 results, 1 plus 2 plus 3, and 4 plus 5 plus 6. So this is result 6 and 15. And again, I can convert this into a table with stupid names, my function, but I can always, no, these are not names, this is first row, but I can always delete the row and rename the columns. The names are name and value, little bit more logical. And let's view the complete code. So again, we have this definition, right? Lookup operator. So I define sales record, and then I calculate total with referring to the names, right? So let me copy this. And I got total, and let's view the complete expression. So it was again inserted in the code in the advanced editor. So I defined a record with 2 fields, first half, second half, and total is a scalar value returned, and it's here, it's returned here. What I don't like here is this, you see, you can also expand this window. By default is contracted, so you don't see everything. That's why I simply pressed Ctrl A just to be sure that I delete everything, even if it's not expanded. Positional index. So let's define this kind of expression. And sorry. Sorry, but the equals sign forgot, and it was a string. So let's be nice, better to see it here in Notepad. So I define sales as a list, and I have 2 records. So I have year, first half, second half, and total. So this is kind of computed column inside the record, and I have total of also here. And now I refer to the first element of the list, total column, second element of the list, total column. And this is what...
Take it they're comments that you got in there, so the //
Yes, yes. Yes, forgot to mention, thank you for noting, yes. / is comment. So,
just comments at the end of the line, that's that.
yeah, you can put them anywhere. So I got this value 4,600. Okay, and of course advanced editor, again this was complete expression edit. So library, define semicolon split object. which is of type splitter object, and then I define that it will split strings by a specific delimiter. And then I will use this my new object to split two strings. And what I got is two lists, so I can expand them, right? And where is this pane? Where is this pane gone? Let me close and load it to worksheet. And edit it again. Where is now this second part gone? Query settings here. Okay, here it is. I wanted to delete this or go back to source, so you can also see that I can expand the second list, and then I have only one navigation, right? Okay.
So that split function, that was in the library, is that it?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Is the definition of the library somewhere? So
Yes. 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 It is this documentation. I got it somewhere on my computer, but it will be easier. It will be easier to Google for it. Formula library specification. Okay, it is here, and it's definitely downloaded somewhere on my computer, but it's simpler to search for this. And then Power Query formula library specification PDF. So
This is what you're saying is a bit out of date.
yeah. So we have this. It is updated from time to time also, but Power Query itself is updated more frequently than the documentation. So this is what I already did: convert it to table and expand it graphically, right? Let me go back to the start. So this is source, convert into table, and now I can expand columns and then load to my Excel as a table. And I got this kind of values. Now expression demo, fine. Let's go to table design. So table name is expressions demo. So I will now add a query that will browse Excel. So let's just go to the blank query, advanced editor, and you see I've just read my current source, and of course this was reading from the current workbook. Later I will also read from files on folder, but I will use the same logic. Okay, so let's go back to slides for a while. So what we created is this let expression. This is the basic Power Query expression. So with let expression we define something, and then we store this something in an object. So let source be this, and then we store this in an object called source. So this is what we created all of the time. And if you start from scratch, of course, you have to write the complete expression. Let something be equals to something else, and then store to an object. So if-else expression, of course, helps us creating conditional expressions, and this is already something that is not available from user interface anywhere. So if you need to add some conditional logic, you have to go to the M programming language. We have error expression, we have try expression, and we have otherwise expression. So we can deal with errors through code. Remember that I had an error, I see it, but I cannot get it, for example, in a table, like I would like to have error message somewhere. So we have if expression. If units equal 0, then let's say error with error message, custom error message, no units because I'm doing division by 0, right? And I can use try. So this is preventing errors. This is trying and catching errors. I can use try, and if after try has finished, I can use has error function. So if my new value has error, I can get error message, else I will get a value. What else? With them, you can also connect to the sources that are not supported out of the box. Of course, using the documentation from the source. So, unfortunately, it's not supported by Microsoft that you use authentication for a data source that is not developed by the Power Query team. So Power Query team simply doesn't trust to any kind of data source, right? But it's doable. So we'll go back to data sources, and you will see that, for example, Foursquare is not among supported data sources. However, it has a perfect documentation. So it's very simple to write a Power Query query and get data from Foursquare. Yet I have to explicitly again point out that this is a not supported way. Right? And then, of course, you can write advanced transformations and populate a custom table. So before I come to this advanced things, let's go and do some more demos, right? So, okay, let's go and start with some supported sources. So what we have: SharePoint list, OData file, feed, Hadoop file, Active Directory, Exchange, Dynamics, Facebook. Facebook has an interface. So Facebook has an interface. If you don't have a database driver in from database or from Azure part, of course, you can go here and go from ODBC. So Facebook is supported out of the box. Great. Google Maps, for example, Foursquare, Twitter is not. So let me go to Facebook and connect to, let's say, activities. Let's see what I got. Statuses. Okay, so I will get statuses. And again, the connection properties are already saved in Power Query. So what I got here is these are my statuses, and of course I get also, like, I can get who like these statuses and so on. Let's go back to source. comments on these statuses, which is from, right, again I can get, and so on. So I'm browsing Facebook online. Let's see if I can, yeah, this is nothing special. This is supported out of the box, right? And okay, let's say I will expand from, just name, right? Because I limit it to myself, it's always me. Object link, what is this? This is something you have to check in Facebook documentation, what exactly this field object link. Apparently it has no meaning for statuses, probably for friends or something, or groups. Then you have links. Likes, comments, okay, this was more or less clear. And of course I can close and load to my workbook my latest Facebook statuses. Oh, I should delete this, okay, but I just found who liked this status or commented on that status. Fine. What else? Well, Google, this is kind of Google Maps, this is not so easy anymore. So this is, we are already moving to the unsupported side, right? Still, you see how to get there, right? Still, you can get very nice documentation from Google. Pretty good. So it's not that bad. So you read that you have to get this XML from this API, and then you can define parameters. So I will check the distance between Ljubljana and Amsterdam if I want to drive, and I will get metric units, and on the top of that I will get also time evaluated, so time needed. So let's go to Power Query, and this time I have to write a blank query. Nothing helps me here, so I go to Advanced Editor and simply copy and paste that query. And if everything is alright, I'm using Google Maps API to get the distance between Amsterdam and Ljubljana. Let's expand these columns. Let's expand some values. Let's say name and values. Row, value, I think this one. Table, element. Let's expand. Yeah, this is the one. So you see I got duration, distance. Nice. Let's remove this. Let's go back to table duration, and now I got duration in seconds, okay, and in hours, 11 hours and 25 minutes. 25 minutes of driving, and distance between Ljubljana and Amsterdam is 1,233 kilometers according to Google Maps. So of course, what are other attributes? I don't think there is. Yeah, these are again things you should check in the documentation. So apparently with this distance, this makes no sense. So let's remove those columns. Let's remove this column, and let's return this to Excel. So I got a table of distances, right, between Ljubljana and Amsterdam in meters, and convert it to textual value to kilometers. Now, let me show you if this is really good documentation, then it's very simple to write these Power Query queries. So very nice documentation exists for Foursquare API endpoints, and with examples for everything. So this is maintained by Foursquare. So for example, I can check users, what they search for, what friends they have, or, for example, check-ins. So I can just click here. Here is documentation. How do you use it? And I can try it out. And I get the code. Not all code is needed. All I need for Power Query is this. How do I authenticate with authentication? So this is generating a session token. So this is all I need for my Power Query. So let's go here, and I will say from web. So I will refer directly to web. And I already got some things. So let's go to check-ins, items. Okay, maybe better to convert something to table. Yes, I want to continue. Where is convert into table? Okay. And again, I will have to convert to table. And let's maybe check when it was done, time zone, venue, right? This is what I need. Time zone, venue, time zone offset. This is not good. But okay, offset from time zone. Let's find venue of the name of the venue. And you see, okay, this is, I checked in a couple of times today, so I have some. And of course, it was not a good column to select. Currently, we are 0 hours from the UTC time, since it's not daylight savings. And since we are here, so that's why this is constant 0. I just created this check-ins lately, so I have something to show. Right. So again, please note that this was not really supported by Power Query. Yet it was extremely simple because of perfect documentation of Foursquare. Now, what about Twitter? Of course, this is something that is very, very popular. You see, it's completely unsupported, and the documentation is not that good. So, turns out that it's really hard to get this. It's doable, and I actually managed to do it, but then after November upgrade, I think it doesn't work anymore, and I cannot correct it. This is unsupported. Anyway, by the end of presentation, I will show you another nice product, free product, that will enable me to browse Twitter in a very, very simple way and show these connections in Twitter in a very, very simple way. Now let's go to some more advanced tips. So let's say that I want to create a cross join of two tables. Sometimes it's useful. You know, for example, adding, if one table has only one row and another multiple rows, you are adding all of these columns to the table with multiple rows with cross join. Very nice technique. Unfortunately, there is no cross join in Power Query. Remember, merge was actually using inner join, right? So I filtered out rows that didn't get joined. I have also option to uncheck the checkbox include only matching rows, so I could simulate outer join, but no way to simulate cross join. Well, it is a simple trick. You add to both tables a constant. Left table constant, just value 1, for example. Right table constant, value 1, and then you join on this column. So every row from the left will join with every single row from the right. Very, very simple, and we got with inner join, we are mimicking cross join. The second was how to get analysis services data, and this tip I changed to something else. Just update it regularly, and you will not need all kind of tips and complex query. So it is optimized for MDX, although you can get basic data also from tabular instances, but it doesn't know how to get, for example, KPIs there, so it's not finished yet, and definitely doesn't support DMX yet. For MDX, it supports everything. Supports everything you got in OLAP cubes, hierarchies, KPIs, the measures, and then it transforms it again to a tabular format, so you can do all kind of transformations and then load to data model. Adding error messages to these erroneous rows, not possible through user interface. However, it is possible to use try expression, and then you get this has error and error fields, and then you can expand them, especially error record, then you get reason, message, and detail in tabular format. Let's say that you wish to have this in tabular format. Of course, interactively, you can always see the error and the message in Power Query Editor. For interactivity, you don't need to expand. Then also could be an interesting question. There are no loops inside Power Query formula language. There are no loops. Now imagine that I need to execute something for each file. Let's say that I have a folder with multiple CSV or Excel files, and I want to do something for each file. Actually, it's doable. You see, we can evaluate. Power Query has internally some kind of cursors. So if we have a table, we can evaluate an expression or even a custom function for each row. So you can mimic for each loop in a two-step process. So first you load the table that defines the loop, and then you do something for each row of this table. So for example, if you use from folder data source, you will get a list of files in the folder automatically in a tabular format. And then you can do something with this and do something for each row. And I will just show you this in the code. So let me show you this more advanced examples. So first, let me show you this idea of cross join. So what I've got here, this is source, right? And I got some table and some cell in my Excel. So what I want is to get this date as a third column here. So what I'm going to do is use this as a source. I will just show you the query. Okay. So let's go here and edit this and show you. So my data source is Excel file, and then you select, right, first sheet and keep only first row, remove all other columns, so I get first cell, first row, first column. So cell A1, right? Then transform to date, and then add a column called stupid join condition. So all of this code, first part of code was just selecting the first cell, and then edit stupid join condition. Right? So next step was reading again from the same source. Just you can refer to a table with table name. Every table in Excel has its own name. It's good practice that you rename it. Default is table 1, table 2, but okay. And then again, edit custom column. And this is already something that uses this internal for each row expression. Take a look at the end. Each. This each means for each row in Power Query formula language. I have 3 rows, so for each row I will add column 1. And by the way, this is constant, each one. This could be also called to my custom function, so I could even add different values, calculated values to each row. So I have this stupid join condition, right? And now merge. Merge is just, let's go to the source. So merge is just, as we did merge, nested join. So we start with table 1 and then we added the constant. And join was that stupid join condition column, which actually means that I get this nested table, which is 1 by 1 table in every row. Right, and that was it. So I mimic it cross join, and the result is that I get this date from the cell A1 added to every single row. Now remember that I had an error, right? Remember that I had an error here. This was initial state, so I had an error in Belarus. Oh yeah, error. It's not here. It was number 90 by population. It's 19th country by population, and I think it's usually, yeah, it is at the end. By Excel reordered this and added to the end. In Power Query it was in the correct position. So let's edit this Power Query and show. So this was countries by population source, right? And then I just added, because remember I deleted the rank, I added it back with Power Query. This, if you remember, initially in Wikipedia table, it was a rank there. Actually, it was first and last column, and I removed both of them without thinking in advance. So I had to add row numbers. Nothing special here, right? But this is important part. This is the important part. I added custom column to my reordered column, and for each row, I use the try expression or try function. In Power Query we have functions. Try on population. So after this try, I get in my population, what I get is either value or sign that it's an error. And then I can expand the error to a list has error, and the error is another record. So in this, if I expand this record, I can get error reason, error message, error details. So this was edit index, kept errors, right? So I only selected rows with errors. So it doesn't work over all rows. Remember that population is actually for rows without errors, it's an integer. So I cannot expand this error for all rows. That's why I have to filter only rows with errors, because here is something completely different than in regular rows. It's not an integer, it is a collection, right? It is a list, right? Okay, reordered columns, and then I edit. This is the important part. So for each row, I edit try expression on population, and then it's just expanding this custom columns has error and error, and then I get all of the details. So could not convert data format error, and detail is the actual value.
So would that suggest if you were using this, you'd effectively have two queries? So one would be where there's no errors at all, and then you'd have a separate one which would do like this. So you'd be able to
Yes.
see the two
Yes.
sets, maybe on a separate sheet.
Exactly, because I have this, in first sheet I got this one, so maybe it would be nice to filter out in this one with errors, and here I got those with errors, with all of the details. Exactly, thank you, very good question. Okay, and finally, let me show you, I got here some multiple Excel files, workbook 1, which has a table. Right, let me go to the table, which doesn't have a table. It just looks like a table, sorry. But it's a sales set. Anyway, we have this sales set, just looks as a table, 1, 2, A1, A2. And then in second workbook, I have similar sales set 3, 4, and B1, B2. And then in third workbook, I have 5, 6, C1, C2. Now, let me go back here and then for each file, mimic for each file. So similarly, like I used this each expression for looping through rows to get errors. So first is source from folder. So if I go here and say from file, from folder, and then I browse to that folder, I got list of files in the folder in tabular format. So
That's loaded the data as well from the file, yeah?
sorry?
That binary column, that was the data.
Exactly. So this was the source, you see, and binary, this is the content. So remove the other columns, this is the content. And then I edit custom column, and Excel data, for each Excel workbook, I extracted content. So these are functions in Power Query library. So Excel.workbook is function from Power Query library. Remember, binary content is full Excel file with all of the metadata, like author and keywords and whatever. So first I extracted only content and saved it in tabular format. Then okay, removed binary, and then since this is tabular format, I can expand it like other nested tables. So I have name, it's in sheet 1, and then data, right? And edit data, no headers. So again, function from the library. So for each row, I use the promote data, promote headers function to get rid of headers. So this one, Excel data, is not so nice. It has Excel headers, not my headers. So headers were column 1, column 2. So I removed this part of metadata inside the worksheet. So first we need to remove metadata for the complete workbook. Now I removed metadata for the worksheet, kept this, expanded, and I got for each file, and I got concatenated result from all of 3 files in a single file. So this was mimicking for each loop. And now the last thing, we still didn't manage to get data from Twitter. As I said, at this moment I'm not able to do it with Power Query. I was able half a year ago, but and so it is unsupported with a reason. Okay? But there is a nice product called NodeXL, open source template for Excel 2007, 10, and 13. And you can explore it, you can explore any kind of network graphs. And you can create a custom source. Since this is open source template, you can extend it if you wish. But we have Twitter, Flickr, YouTube supported out of the box. So all you need is to use this template, which is Excel workbook. So let me go and use it. So I will just search, I don't know where exactly it is. NodeXL Excel template. And let's go to NodeXL tab and import data. So you see I have many different possibilities from Open Matrix workbook and so on. Flickr, Twitter, YouTube. So let's go from Twitter search network. So we are going to search for something. So let's try to search, for example, for DevWeek hashtag. Okay, and only basic networks, not basic network plus friends and so on, right? And I already provided account authorization to NodeXL. Still, you know, you should be very, very careful when browsing this kind of graphs. Okay, yes. Why? You know that basically exploding a graph is an exponential problem. So it means like maybe if I would select something that has one more node, the time would go from, let's say, 10 seconds to 10 minutes, and then one more it would go to 10 hours. So you should be careful to filter this, but also I used public Twitter API here, which is by itself very limited. So public API is free. I mean, but also you can get the full access to all of the tweets from Twitter for free, but you have to register and explain why. Simply send email and explain why and how you are going to use it, because of course they are also afraid for their performance. I mean, with a good exponential query, you can also get down Twitter. You know, this is like let's say with a recursive common table expression and SQL Azure, you could get down SQL Azure. Unfortunately, you don't want to do this because Microsoft is charging by the resources, so you will go bankruptcy if you try it. But it's doable. So you see, let's show the graph of this network. So this was limited. So I can find, let's say, the most important vertices that generate the most of traffic in Twitter, and most of connections. So this name Finish _ EU is apparently one of those that tweet a lot. But please also note about DevWeek. But please also note that this is not a random sample. By default, I think Twitter returns every 100 tweet. So it doesn't mean that these are really reliable results. It's more like for testing, not really reliable results. Okay, but if somebody appears here 100 times more than somebody else, then probably this person is tweeting more about their week.
That's real time, isn't it? That's on just now, that talk. That data come back just now, yeah?
Yeah.
Because the tweet you were on is from a talk that's going on just now, I think.
Yeah.
Someone's not listening.
Yeah, we found.
Go ahead and pull them out.
So, and you have all kind of different graphs. I don't even know what all of these graphs mean. So Okay, some are simple. Show this in circle, right? But let's say it's kind of easy to find some basic information from social networks here as well. Right. So altogether, this was not Power Query anymore. Still, we managed to get data from many different sources. So besides SQL databases, analysis services databases, which I didn't show, okay. Let me just remember. It's extremely simple to connect to analysis services nowadays. So just go here. I will connect to my virtual machine again, and in first step I will get just the list of all databases, and then I can navigate like in analysis services client. So let's go to this adventure works. For example, direct sales. So this is internet sales. So let's add some measure like gross profit, and let's go to customers and add some demographic data, or not. This is not a hierarchy, this is flattened, so it's not so nice. I think this should be a hierarchy. And then I can load data in Excel. So I have city, country, postal code, state, province. It's not ordered, but it's full hierarchy. And this is my Power Query query. Unfortunately, the MDX query is kind of hidden. So this Power Query doesn't create MDX query directly. It does create MDX query behind the scenes. These were the selected columns. If this would be a simple query here, then you could replace MDX query with DMX or with any custom DAX, and it would work for everything supported in analysis services. Also, analysis services by itself supports multidimensional version, supports 4 languages. You can query in DAX. MDX is native language. You can query also in DAX, and analysis services multidimensional converts DAX queries to MDX queries. DMX for data mining models, and it also has, I don't know if you knew it, but it also has some dynamic management views like SQL Server, and you use Transact SQL for those. A single product that supports 4 languages. Anyway, this is not so open, but you don't need to find any kind of workaround anymore. It's easy now to use also analysis services data. Here are some nice resources, right? This was resource for Power Query in Twitter. Unfortunately, it doesn't work anymore. Chris Webb is doing a lot of advanced blogs about Power Query, very useful. So, any questions? Yes?
Can you go back 2 slides? Yeah, bottom point. You can do much more than the UI can do with the aim expression. Yeah. So I can see my business users getting a lot of use out of this, but they're never going to learn M.
You're right.
So is the UI being improved over time?
Yes,
So
yes. Well, you saw analysis services connection. This is UI improved. Before that, you should connect to analysis services endpoint and send MDX query. So it is, and that's why also Facebook is supported, and it's very simple to use. Twitter, Foursquare, Google are not supported. Google Maps are not supported. So over time, they want to be sure what they are adding. So over time, as I said, every 3 months you got 2 or 3 additional data sources supported. So it's already now pretty impressive.
When we're looking at the example about looping over other workbooks and pulling data in, I take it this is all about getting data into your current worksheet. You can't then write data out to other workbooks so it works more like ETL really works, where you could push data out again.
Okay, yes, you're right. You always
It's always in.
pulling.
Yeah.
You are always pulling data to current workbook, current data model. You cannot push it anywhere. As I said, this is one probably the feature number one requested for SSIS. Give us opportunity to use Power Query. So imagine you could develop quickly in user interface an expression, copy paste. Why wouldn't in SSIS what we need is Power Query data source,
Yeah.
and that's it. But that would just simple data source that would accept Power Query expressions and start Power Query engine to evaluate it. This would be great, and this would be enterprise grade solution.
Yeah.
So do you use that stuff in your normal job?
Power Query, you know what? This is all of this Power BI stuff looks very nice when you start, but they are mostly toys. I mean, how much useful information? This is big buzz around this Twitter, Facebook, but how much useful information can you get from there? You know, it's nearly impossible to get really good information because 99% is just useless. Pictures of my dinner and so on. Who cares? What does this help you? So I have a small company, development company, that actually develops this line of business applications, but really for small business only. So they went to this direction. So they enabled their customers to use Power Pivot, Power Query. So let's say I'm kind of support for them. So we had a couple of implementations in small business. In enterprises, regular data warehousing analysis services is still prevailing. Also, you know, they said like with Power Pivot, you don't need data warehouse. Come on, what now? Every user will use Power Query. No way.
I suppose it'd be quite useful if you're doing some research into sort of is this a possible new area of data that you could
Yes.
have? It's quite handy because it's quick.
Yes.
You know, that's
And that's
Well,
why.
that's where I tend to use this, is in that proof of concept. Is it worth me spinning up my devs to actually put it into the enterprise?
Once you're at that next bit, it's like, okay,
that's
no,
okay.
use this, get it in like
Yeah,
that.
I've done
and
it
you're
in
away.
this. You're the expert on this.
Yeah.
You now go figure.
Yeah.
But getting something useful, you know, I think it was 2008 or in 2009, I actually did analysis of Twitter, and it was kind of bet that it's possible to get something useful. I was actually paid for it. This was a bet made in a pub with some guys from university in Maribor, second biggest university. They said this is impossible. I said, no, it's just you that don't know how to do it. Well, you do it. We are financing if you do it. So we get proof of concept, and it was really hard time, but I managed to get some useful data to evaluate with a lot of mathematics to evaluate data, and I got some interesting things. It was the time of riots in Iran, so it really pointed out the riots in Iran and deselected other things, but it was very hard to get something useful there. Definitely not something I would do with Power Query, but as a proof of concept, and then the next step is missing, and the next step is put this in SSIS. Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you.